Well, okay, boys and girls, this little video is being filmed from another location, as you can tell. um, Baby boomers are screwed. Sorry to tell you. But there's a lot of things that I've been reading, researching, hearing about, and having conversations about how the odds are being stacked against us. And most of it is not our fault. Some of it is. We need to take some responsibility. So in this video, I'm going to go over some of the pressures that we're going to be feeling, we are feeling, and that are going to increase, and maybe just some possible solutions to this quandary. Okay, here comes my little video. Okay, well, as I said, this video has been inspired by comments and messages and one-on-one meetings that I've been having with people that are subscribers. And I always forget to do this, but speaking of subscribers, I just want to thank everyone that's subscribed recently over the last 2 or 3 months. I thank you very much. It's much appreciated, and welcome to the little old dog family. Okay, moving forward. Baby boomers are the largest generation ever. And the interesting statistics that I found as I did some research on this, and I'm going to be looking down because I made a lot of notes, is the average guy and gal our age, in their 60s, I'm 69, and worked for 46 years. That's a lot. Worked hard, good employees, did our job, showed up, raised our families, did our stuff, bought our houses, bought our cars, contributed to the economy, did all these things, and now we're in our golden years. And unfortunately, our golden years are becoming tarnished, and the outlook for the future is pretty gloomy. And so this is not a video I want to make. This is a video I just assumed never came across my radar. But I feel it's important that I just share it with you because it's bothering me. And I want to bring it to light. And I think there might be an answer to some of these problems that you're facing right now. 45% of us at our age, as we hit retirement, have no savings account. Zero. And that's basically either due to poor planning, I can confess to that, or circumstances, which I can confess to that too. The Great Recession did a lot to wipe me out. I invested in homes and thought that the appreciation would be a big part. I invested in a 401k. I'll get to that in a little bit. But I didn't put aside a lot of personal cash. However, 28% of the population, boomer population, has managed to save $100,000. Now, while $100,000 is not a small amount of money, the research also bore out that the average person, the average baby boomer of our age, spends $52,000 per year to live. That's rent, food, car, utilities, etc. Nothing major. We're not going on big Caribbean holidays. That's just to live. So what's the burn rate on 100K if you're spending 52 a year? If that was your sole income, or the only thing you relied on was that savings account. So what happened? Back after the Big Depression in the 1920s, in 1935, President Roosevelt created Social Security. And from that, it was because in the Great Depression, the majority of the people that suffered the most and was observed were elderly. The older people were the ones that were hungry and in soup lines and homeless and destitute and really took a punch to the gut, where the younger generation was able to recoup and recover. The elderly never did. So President Roosevelt enacted the Social Security Act in 1935. And what it was something that, it was no freebie, it was no giveaway, it wasn't welfare. It was every time we got a check, they took out a portion of it and invested it for us into a fund that gained interest, that grew as it was invested in. And you had, at the time, the largest population was the baby boomers. For the longest time, we were the biggest population on the planet, or in the America rather. And all of us were contributing, whether we wanted to or not. It was just taken out of our check, our Social Security. And it was cool and groovy. And when they first started to draw on it, it worked like a charm. As people started to retire back in the day, prior to our time, they were benefiting from that. Then an interesting thing happened in the 80s. Not really interesting. Unfortunate, I guess is the kindest word. President Reagan in the 80s dipped into the Social Security Fund and used it to finance other projects, tax cuts, etc. And he's not the only guilty party, because George Bush Sr. and Bill Clinton, they also dipped into the funds. And all of them promised that they, at one point in time, they'd replenish it. And guess what? Not one nickel was thrown back in. It was taken out. It was used for other things. I think it's criminal that they did it, all three of them, but that's just my opinion. We paid into it, and then for us, and then the government took it out for whatever they wanted to use it for, with basically saying, here's an IOU, we'll get it back in there at some point in time. Didn't happen. So what's the result of that? Right now, the rate of homelessness in the 1990s was, for senior citizens up to the 90s, was 11%. 11% of the homeless people up to the 1990s was at 11%. It is now at 50%. So, of all the homeless people that you see in America right now, half of them are baby boomers. That's a tragedy. That should never have happened, but it did. Number one source of income for senior citizens, for baby boomers, 90% of them, their number one source of income, Social Security. And it's been dipped into. Now, where was I here? Since 2010, the cash flow in became negative. In 2010, there was more money in benefits being paid out because it had been dipped into, remember? It was supposed to stay there and get invested. No. Anyway, there's a smaller amount of principal, and as of 2010, it went negative. By 2034, today it's 2024, so in 10 years, if the economy continues to grow at the same pace that it's growing at today, which is pretty good. I mean, I know there's inflation and all that, but there's low unemployment and there's people working, there are people contributing, but it will be depleted in 10 years. That does not mean it will no longer exist. It will simply mean that you and me will have to take approximately a 23% reduction or haircut on our benefits. It's the only solution so far. So if I'm getting $1,000 today, I'm going to get $770 10 years from now. And do you think the cost of living is going to go down by 23%? No. The rate of inflation is growing and is going to compound that problem even more. Do you think I'm going to get any healthier or you're going to get any healthier? No. Do you qualify for Medicare, Medicaid? Well, you might qualify for Medicare, but Medicaid pretty much pushes out the middleman because you've got to be at the poverty level. Most of us don't qualify for that. So where do we stand now? I don't know. Let me turn the page. I've got more notes. Another little dip that happened. Pensions. Remember those? Pensions were something that companies would contribute to for their employees. It created loyalty. And then, once again, in the 1980s, there was a little gizmo created called the 401k. Now, back when the pensions were working and the employer contributed to your pension, didn't cost you a nickel. As long as you were loyal, you stayed with the company for 30 years or whatever the number was, you were guaranteed, like a Social Security check, your pension check. The 401k was invented. I forget the guy's name who invented it, but it took the burden off the employer and put the burden back onto the employee. And it took off like a rocket because it came in the 80s. Number one, the employers loved it. They loved the fact that, hey, we don't have to put any more profit into our employees. We can let them contribute. The same way we contribute to Social Security. They get to put it into the 401k, and it gets to be managed by a fund manager. And the reason it took off and was so popular was in the 80s and the 90s, there was this great big boom in the stock market. So people would put X amount of dollars in. Some employers were cool. They would match you dollar for dollar or two for one. Not saying they were all bad, but for the most part, you were still contributing your money. And anything they gave you was your money, but it was being invested. And in the 80s and the 90s, people were watching their 401ks climb like Mount Everest. Sometimes it would have tripled. If you had 500,000 in the 401k, it went to 1.5 million, and you were feeling rich. That was another problem. People were feeling rich, and they owned homes. And what did people do when they feel rich? Well, they start thinking they are, and they start spending, and they start taking out home equity loans and all this other stuff so they can buy the big, bright, shiny car that's not going to be worth anything in 5 years, and the boat that they'll put in the lake, twice a year and then park it in the backyard, a mobile home, an RV, a big TV, spend, bling, 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 all things bright and shiny that eventually just rust and go away. Minimalism was thrown out the window. Why? Because we all felt rich during the 90s. And then, boom, bang, bing, the bust. The dot-com bust came. I'm laughing because the 401ks that were worth 1 million, 1.5 billion, which is a pretty big exaggeration, a lot didn't get that high, we're now right back to where they started from because everything crashed. And one other thing that wasn't disclosed, or understood at least, I'm sure it was disclosed in the fine print, was a lot of these companies managing the 401ks. Wall Street always has a way of making money, right? I've never seen them lose. They were taking fees. And so 2% of your fee, 2% of your income, if you made 600,000, say, in your 401k, go ahead and knock 2% off of that and figure out what the number is, and that's your net, if it's still there. So, where are we? Oh, we're at a point where we're getting up in years, we're living longer, and we're also experiencing more chronic health concerns, And Medicare and Medicaid, well, Medicaid's pretty much off the table for most people because we earn too much, even though it's not a lot. It's still not below the poverty line. Medicare is there, A and B, but it doesn't cover nursing facilities. I just recently found that out because that's what I've been relying on for my long-term care. Found out it's not there. What does it cost to go to a nursing home? I'll check that out. Between $800 and $900 a month back in the States. You get, and who wants to be in a nursing home anyway? I mean, a lot of them are going, during COVID, a lot of people got really sick and died because of unsanitary conditions. They're chronically understaffed. A lot of them are going out of business. Even at the $800 and $900, they're not finding it profitable enough to stick around. So what's been happening is now the millennials, our children, are facing a choice of coming in and assisting mom and dad, or mom or dad. Maybe one's gone and the other one's still here. And instead of the proverbial 30-year-old still living with you and me, it won't get out of the house, the roles have reversed. And now we're kind of looking to them to take care of us. And what kind of emotional strain, financial strain, and just overall drag is that we're imposing on our kids. Because in America, it's not like over here in the Philippines. I can tell you that beyond a shadow of a doubt. Over here, family is everything. Taking care of somebody elderly is almost a badge of honor. Where in America, while we love our parents and we love our grandparents and we love our kids and all that, we're just a much more independent breed of people. And we tend to fend for ourselves and make it on our own. And I mean, I got past a time in my life where I would never have called my father up and said, hey man, can I borrow $200? And nor would my kids ever call me and say, hey dad, can I have $200? Just made it on their own. We would see each other maybe on holidays. We'd make a trip, Christmas, Thanksgiving. In many cases, families just kind of, lose that closeness, or there's some dissension, or there's some tension between the parents and the kids. Kids are a lot more complicated these days than they were back in our day. We used to get in trouble in school. Now schools just take the kids and send them home, usually to an empty nest where they can just wreak havoc. But that's another topic. Back on this, do you really want your kids to take care of you, even if they are willing to? I don't think so. It would place an emotional, financial drain on it. They actually have done studies that have found that the kids, over time, find themselves wishing that their parent or parents would just die and relieve them of the burden when they are indeed taking care of it. That is sad news. So where are we headed with all this? Where are we going to go? If in 10 years, if I'm still walking the planet, and I have to take a 25% or 23% or a 20% cut in my pay, what does that mean? Well, I knew a long time ago, even though I didn't follow my own advice, people used to talk to me about money, and they would question me about this and that, and I had an old saying, and I didn't live by it, I'll confess. If I had, I would have been in a lot better shape if I had taken my own advice. But what I used to tell people back in the day, when they would ask me about money matters, I would say, you know what, brother? It's really not how much you make. It's how much you spend. And if we sit back and we're honest with ourselves and we realize how foolish we have been with our money in the past, brings me right back to that same number that I started with, that, 50% of senior citizens, 50% of baby boomers got bupkis in their savings account because we were spenders. We wanted to keep up with the Joneses. We had to have the big TV, the shiny car, the bigger house, blah, 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 and impress who? No one. Really. The, I always admired when I heard about the millionaire next door. The millionaire next door was a catchphrase that came out probably in the 90s, I think is when I first heard it. And that was the dude that bought one house and stayed in it, had the same TV for 20 years, the one with the rabbit ears. He didn't need a flat screen. He didn't need a flashy car. He didn't need a boat. He didn't need a boat and a car and a truck and a ski-doo and a this and a that and a bip and a bop and a boop. Nope. He just drove his truck back and forth to work. He probably contributed to his 401k. He probably tithed 10% to his church. And he probably, more importantly, tithed 10 or 20% to himself religiously every month. I had a friend back in Vegas, Mike Burke, and he said that his father, no matter what, put $10 a week into a savings account religiously. It was his habit. I know, you're saying a big deal, $10. But you know what? That was a habit that my friend Mike picked up on and from his father. And he is, as far as I know, very successful, him and his wife. God bless him. See, I know Mike doesn't watch the channel, but I'll just give him a shout out anyway. My point being is, how do we solve this? It's coming, and I don't really have a lot of faith in it being fixed. I don't have a lot of faith in our politicians doing the right thing as far as Social Security is concerned. Well, I just think that they're squandering money on their own pet projects. And I'm not talking politics. I'm just talking economics here. I don't see anybody refilling the jar, the cookie jar of Social Security. And I'm pretty convinced that I am going to be taking a haircut financially. Instead of a COLA raise, I'm going to get boned, in 10 years or less, because the economy might take another turn. Inflation might go up again. Inflation's going up here in the Philippines. What's the answer? Well, it goes back to that saying, it's not what you make, it's what you spend. If it was me and I was still sitting in America as opposed to where I was 7 years ago, since I moved out here, the day I moved out here, I made a deal with myself. I felt that I learned my economic lesson. I said, I'm never, ever going to buy anything that I can't afford to walk away from. And so far, I've managed to keep that promise to myself. And I've bought a couple of things that would be considered to be large purchases. I also gauge it by need versus want. May and I we just bought some land, and that's to build a house on. We're not going to build the house for at least another year. Why? Because we can't pay cash for it right now. We have to take this year and we have to cut back, live even smaller than we were before, and save and save and save. And hopefully within a year, year and a half, 2 years, whatever it takes, we can build that house. And then it's not what we make, it's what we owe. If we have a nice little house, free and clear, solar energy, our overhead would be property taxes, which runs about $10 a year out here, and electric bill, which we have solar, be about $7 a month. So how much do we really need to make? We need to make enough to put gas in the motorbike, gas in the car that's now going to be 4 years old because we're not buying a new one, and food on the table. So the price of food out here has gone up. May was laughing the other day because she went to a place called Krispy Kreme and she went to go buy a thing of rice. And she said, I can't believe it. And I said, what's that? This was just yesterday. She said, rice is 12 pesos. Dumaguete, it's 10 pesos. So she thinks that the new Krispy Kreme in Valencia is bouncing the price by 2 pesos. And I said, I bet you anything, May, if you go down to Dumaguete, it's 12 pesos also. We've yet to resolve that little dispute we're having. She thinks it's Valencia. I say it's all over. Point being is that the prices are going up. I'm not saying you need to move to the Philippines. I'm saying what you may want to consider is what I considered. I didn't want to work anymore. This is what you need to consider. Do you want to continue to work? Are you able to work? Is there a job for you? I know at the age of 69 that if I went back to America and started to apply for jobs, I'd be laughed out of the building. Even if I went into my old industry, I wouldn't be able to do it. It's too taxing. I can't do manual labor. I'm not physically able to. I'm not smart enough to do IT work on a computer. I don't even know if I could work at Walmart. I don't know if I'd be able to stand on my feet for 10 hours or whatever it is. So what would I do? To be honest with you, I don't know. Cut expenses. I would get on the computer, if it was me and I was you, what I did 7 years ago when I said I don't want to work. I could work. I could have continued to work till I was 65, 66, no problem. It wasn't an economic thing with me. It was I don't want to work anymore thing with me. And therefore it became economic because the minute I got my Social Security, I Googled and Googled and Googled 10 cheapest places to retire. After this, that, and the other, without going into the whole diatribe about it, I ended up in the Philippines. That was 7 years ago. And I've managed to live under my Social Security check every single solitary month that I've been here, with the exception of the first 6 months. So for six and a half years, I have lived under that. Any side hustle money that I've had via the YouTube has gone into savings. That's just my dynamic. That never would have happened in the States. For some reason, when I came over here, something in my head snapped and it just said no more. I have so much more, I don't know, I just get so much more relaxed and I get so much more relief and gratification when I see my little savings account every month bounce up. Remember Mike Burke's dad, $10 a week? That's the way I feel. I feel like Mike's dad. Every week or every month in my case, it just goes up and up and up and up. And still, we've been able to acquire things when it's been prudent to do so, and we don't go below our threshold. It's not what you make, it's what you earn. Baby boomers who are getting squeezed, please sit up and take notice. I'm not saying move to the Philippines. I'm saying, look, there are alternatives. There might be a cheaper place in the States for you to live. There might be a place where you won't be a burden to your children. There may be a place overseas that appeals to you. The research has to be done. You have to sit down and have a conversation with yourself, in my humble opinion. It's the conversation that I had, and I never regret having had it. Sorry to bring you bad news, but I like to speak the truth. I like to speak about reality. I'd be interested in your feedback. All right, thanks for hanging in with me this long if you're still with me. I'll see you in the next video.